People like you, who are at the bottom, shouldn't come here, it'll get dirty. It's questionable humanity that allows someone to utter such terrible words with ease. There are those with high pride who look down on and laugh at others. Such people are unlikely to be given the time of day by anyone. Humans are creatures that cannot live alone. I wonder if they are intentionally isolating themselves or if they simply don't understand anything. Either way, I think it's unfortunate. My name is David Reed. I'm taking a slightly late summer vacation, and I'm currently at a villa in the Highlands. This highland, where time flows leisurely, is the perfect place for me to refresh both mentally and physically, having been wrapped in the bustling time of the city. Lying on the couch sofa in the living room with large windows, I was reminiscing about an incident that happened right before this vacation while looking out at the mountains outside the window. Triggered by that incident, my thoughts traveled back in time, and before I knew it, I had embarked on a journey reflecting on my life. There's an item called a computer, which is indispensable for people nowadays. It seems that in the past, it was called a microcomputer or an office computer. My deep connection with computers began when I was in the 5th grade of elementary school. Although I knew that computers existed before then, I thought they had nothing to do with me. However, when the operating system OS called Windows 95 was released in 1995, I turned my attention to computers again. Seeing the news that a large number of people gathered at stores to buy it, despite it being late at night on the release day of Windows 95, something inside me was stimulated. My birthday was near at that time, so I asked my father for a computer. Even at that time, when manufacturers were fiercely marketing computers due to the popularity of the newly released Windows 95, the price was at least $2,000. It was a very expensive request for a toy for an elementary school student. But my father listened to my request. He must have felt my earnestness and foresaw the future potential of computers since he used them for work. A computer can become either a useful tool or just a box, depending on how you use it. David, you should think carefully about how you want to use the computer. Prompted by my father's words, I decided to thoroughly learn the basics of computers. This is how my relationship with computers began. One characteristic of my personality is that I am not easily intimidated. Not being easily intimidated means being curious and fearless. I think I am the type of person who actively takes on challenges, is forward-thinking, and does not run away from things that would make most people hesitate. This must have motivated me to boldly challenge something as daunting as computers. This trait was also evident in my interpersonal relationships. In short, I actively engage with others and easily make friends without being shy. When I was playing in the sandbox at the park during kindergarten, one boy asked if he could borrow my shovel. I said, sure, but in return, let's be friends, and became friends with someone I had just met. In elementary school, I actively talked to my classmates, and before I knew it, I found myself at the center of the group. I aimed to make 100 friends and kept making new ones. It might have been mass-producing friends, which might be slightly different from building true friendships. Without fully understanding what true friends are, I might have thought that having superficial connections was enough to consider someone a friend. Friends equal acquaintances, perhaps. Shallow relationships can easily crack under certain circumstances, and at one point, I ended up being completely ignored by several of my friends. I don't remember the exact cause. It must have been something trivial. It took quite a while to reconcile with everyone, and it was settled by me backing down. Honestly, I didn't think it was all my fault, but I apologized out of a desire to quickly return to normal relations. After this experience, I started to ponder what true friends are. At the time, I was in the 5th grade and didn't understand complex matters, but I was eager to find the answer to this question. My tool in this quest was the computer my father had bought for me. A key feature of Windows 95 was its enhanced networking capabilities. Unfortunately, the network feature wasn't included in the initial release version, but it became easy for anyone to connect to the internet with the purchase of additional expansion features. The internet is a global network, allowing easy access to information from around the world. Back then, there were no robotic search engines like Google, and researching things took more effort than it does now, but I used the computer to explore what true friendship really meant. The conclusions I reached were as follows. 1. It refers to a friendship bound by deep ties. 2. Being with them brings a sense of peace to the heart. 3. True friends trust, help, and support each other. 4. True friends can express their emotions honestly and accept each other's feelings with openness. Though these were abstract expressions, and I wasn't entirely sure how to make real friends, I could see a glimmer of hope within myself. I believe that forming bonds is the result of accumulating small steps. It's not something that can be easily achieved overnight. So, I decided to first open my heart, be genuine, and strive to be helpful to my friends. I aimed for a relationship based on closeness and trust, not just superficial acquaintance. Of course, the effects weren't immediately visible and took time or a certain trigger to develop, so it wasn't easy to feel a tangible sense of progress. However, I am patient by nature, so I didn't feel rushed or frustrated. It wasn't a conscious effort, it naturally evolved, so I never felt it was hard. In my elementary school graduation anthology, I wrote about 2 aspirations. One was to continue expanding my knowledge and skills in computers and to venture into system development in the future. The other was to make as many friends as possible into true friends, creating treasures for life. Entering junior high school, the commuting area expanded, and students from other elementary schools also enrolled. I was excited about the new friendships that awaited. In junior high, I met Kevin and Michael. We were in the same class, and upon seeing Michael, I immediately remembered him. He was the boy I became friend with in kindergarten after lending him my shovel in the sandbox. We had gone to different elementary schools, so our contact had ceased. I have a good memory and am good at remembering faces. Even though our appearances had changed during puberty, some features remained, and I recognized Michael right away. "Do you remember me? It's been a long time, but I'm David, the friend you made in the park." "Yeah, I remember. It's amazing to meet you again, especially in the same class. I'm looking forward to getting along with you from now on." Our reunion sparked lively conversations. Then, someone approached us. "Michael, you know someone from another elementary school. Who is this guy?" I was irked a bit by being referred to as this guy, but I replied calmly, "I'm David. We met a long time ago and have just reunited. And you are?" "He's Kevin, my childhood friend. We've known each other since before kindergarten." "Well, that's amazing. Being friends since you were that young." "It's not really amazing. It just happened that way." "Well, yeah, it's one of those inseparable relationships. Michael can't do anything without me. I'm the one taking care of him." "What does he mean by taking care of?" I don't know the history of their relationship, so I can't judge if it's odd, but I felt uncomfortable with Kevin seemingly belittling Michael. Kevin glared at me and walked away with Michael. I've never disliked someone or felt uncomfortable from the first meeting. However, I had an immediate negative impression of Kevin. I've always wanted to get along with everyone, so I've researched attitudes and behaviors that make one easily accepted, using the computer. I also looked into behaviors that make one disliked or avoided. What I found included lack of manners, harsh tone, not greeting, and also condescending attitude and high pride. From what I saw, Kevin seemed to embody all of these traits. It might be premature to judge, but first impressions often prove accurate. I thought it might be best to keep my distance from him. This thought is extremely rare for me, almost as if the world has turned upside down. Because my basic stance has always been to make as many friends as possible. But why is Michael sticking with Kevin? Even though they were childhood friends, I found it strange and couldn't help but feel puzzled. My attention would drift towards the two of them, seemingly without intention, and I felt like Kevin was dominating Michael. When I asked classmates from the same elementary school about them, it turned out my impressions were accurate. Those two have been in the same class from 1st to 6th grade in elementary school. It was a surprise to even me that they ended up in the same class in junior high too. Well, I've been in the same class with them for 4 years now, making it the 5th year. What became clear during their long association was that Kevin acted like the master and Michael like the servant, a dynamic that seemed to persist. I don't understand why Michael puts up with Kevin's commands. I certainly wouldn't want that kind of relationship. I agreed and thought that I couldn't accept such a friendship for myself. I don't believe that's what friendship is supposed to be. Although I understood the situation, I didn't know what to do and could only silently observe. Even when we moved on to the 2nd year of junior high, the three of us ended up in the same class again. I still didn't get along with Kevin and tried to avoid him as much as possible, but I had started talking more with Michael. Whenever we talked, Kevin would somehow always show up and interrupt, which had become a sort of routine, unavoidable since he would approach us even if we tried to avoid him. Kevin's intrusions felt like he was saying, "Don't mess with my subordinate," which was annoying. I often wondered if I was overthinking things. One day, noticing Michael looking at a computer magazine, I struck up a conversation. "Hey, are you interested in computers too? I'm really into them and have been studying a lot about them." "Yay, that's interesting. What a coincidence. I've been interested in computers since around 5th grade. Mostly, I've gained my knowledge from books and magazines like this." "Since 5th grade, was it Windows 95 that got you started?" Finding out that Michael's interest in computers started similarly to mine made me really happy, and we engaged in a lively discussion about computers. As usual, Kevin appeared out of nowhere during our conversation. "What's all the excitement about? Michael's family isn't rich, so he couldn't possibly have a computer." I wasn't aware of his family's financial situation, but I wondered what kind of person would make such a point to someone who didn't know or ask. "David, your family is poor too, right? Poor people consoling each other won't make things any better." "I'm not exactly poor." Being suddenly called a poor person startled me a bit. I was shaken by the unexpected comment, and Kevin seemed to take my reaction as confirmation. "Remember the field trip when we wore casual clothes instead of school uniforms? Your outfit, those worn-out clothes, made me laugh. Can't even afford new clothes, and you didn't bring a packed lunch but ate cheap snacks instead." I was in tears from laughing so hard. I'm the type who gets attached to my belongings, and I tend to wear my favorite clothes for a long time. My mom often tells me to change it up. The reason I didn't bring a packed lunch that day was because both of my parents were busy, and there was no time to prepare one. Of course, I was informed about this beforehand, so I had bought my favorite snacks the day before. For someone who doesn't know the situation to label me as poor and laugh about it is just unacceptable. More than that, being ridiculed for my favorite clothes being cool-looking and my favorite snacks being belittled really made me angry. "Michael, let's go. If you don't hurry, I won't let you touch the computer. You can't afford such an expensive thing. Just do as I say, and I'll let you use it." Wait a minute, are you bribing Michael into obedience with material things? Is that what friends do? I couldn't stand it anymore, both being mocked myself and seeing Michael treated so poorly. "It's okay, David. Thanks." "Oh, shut up. What's a poor guy like you yelling about? Just adding insult to injury." At that moment, Michael gave me a look that made me hold back, and I let the two of them leave. but I had firmly decided to change my approach. I couldn't just stand by anymore. I decided it was time to have a serious talk with Michael. I wanted this discussion to be uninterrupted by Kevin, so I waited for the right moment to approach Michael. I confronted him about his twisted relationship with Kevin, questioning how he could tolerate being treated like a lackey. Although I initially intended to calmly reason with him, my pent-up frustration with Kevin led me to become emotional, which might have been a mistake. I appreciate your concern, but you're being too nosy. What do you know about my relationship with Kevin? True friends aren't like that, are they? Shouldn't you point out when the other is wrong? Being submissive doesn't help anyone. You don't know the Kevin from the past. He's actually a kind and considerate friend. Yes, he may have become a bit twisted over time, but I believe he'll return to his old self. Until then, someone has to support him. True friends trust, help, and support each other. Michael seemed to think that's how he should act towards Kevin. But what about Kevin? Isn't their relationship one-sided? The importance of mutuality is being completely overlooked. I want to convey this to Michael, but my frustration at not being able to express it properly leads to a confrontational tone. Enough is enough. When Michael shouted, I suddenly became calm. What am I getting so worked up about? I realized that fighting with Michael wouldn't solve anything, and my words came out naturally. I'm sorry, I went too far. Please forgive me. Michael, who had been riled up by our exchange of harsh words, was taken aback by my sudden change and apology. No, I should apologize too. I know you care about me, but please let me do things my way a bit more. Understood, but don't try to handle everything alone. If you're in trouble, rely on me. Embarrassed by our previous heated exchange, we awkwardly shook hands, feeling somewhat shy. You're amazing, you know, being able to admit your faults so openly and apologize so freely. Even after a fight, being able to reconcile and understand each other builds trust and allows us to appreciate one another. True friendship allows us to express our feelings openly and accept them without reservations. Being able to speak and act without worrying about how the other might perceive us is the first step towards true friendship. This incident seemed to take my relationship with Michael to the next level. What's up, Michael? You've changed a bit lately, haven't you? After our discussion, I noticed a slight change in Michael's behavior. It's a subtle change that only I, who's been paying close attention, can perceive, and even Kevin might think it's a bit odd, but there's definitely a change. Previously, he just went along with things, but now, depending on the topic, he subtly incorporates his own opinions, attempting to adjust Kevin's actions. However, he hasn't managed to change Kevin's behavior, who acts like he's the king. Perhaps it's a long-term plan. When we became juniors, Michael and I ended up in the same class, but Kevin, unfortunately, was placed in the next class. This made me wonder if it led to Kevin becoming uncontrollable. Until now, Michael had been somewhat restraining Kevin, but that influence was gone. Barely a month into the new school year, Kevin was rejected by everyone in his class. Everyone ignored him, treating him as if he didn't exist. I hadn't inquired about the details, but it seems this was all due to Kevin's selfish, domineering attitude and foul language. Michael tried to reach out, but the barrier of being in different classes made it impossible to find the right moment to do so. By the time the second semester started, Kevin had no place in the class at all. I couldn't bring myself to help, watching from the sidelines. Being in a different class was certainly a factor, but I just didn't feel like helping him. Still, I felt troubled by my inability to befriend everyone, contrary to my own ideals. Oh, my family is wealthy, and I am fortunate. I'm smart too. Yet, all around me are fools. They'll regret this someday. I'll make them realize that I'm the chosen one. Before graduating from middle school, Kevin was lonely, left to boost his own morale. Michael was desperately trying to reach out to him. I wouldn't admit it out loud, but reluctantly, I was trying to support Michael in helping Kevin. Whether he knew of our efforts or not, that guy only showed more foolishness. "Hey, David, you're not taking the high school entrance exams, are you? Because you're too poor to afford the tuition and have to work, right? It's hard to see a schoolmate fall to the bottom, but well, it can't be helped. You're poor after all." Kevin seemed delighted to taunt me about not taking the high school entrance exams, having heard about it from somewhere. The brief period when I thought things had gotten better before our third year now seemed like a distant memory. Kevin had become even more egotistical and dismissive of others than before. "I don't need friends. After graduation, it'll be a goodbye. I'll feel relieved. I'll do well in high school. I won't stumble again. I'll be going to the same high school as you, so I hope to see a new Kevin there." Ha ha ha, sure. I'm different from those who only have a middle school education. I'll excel in high school and university, and then land a job at a top company. I indeed chose not to take the high school entrance exams. That's because I had something I wanted to pursue. Kevin might think I'm poor, but that's not the case. A family that could afford to buy a computer costing over $2,000 for their son when he was in 5th grade can't be considered poor. I chose not to go to high school to pursue what I wanted to do. What Kevin thinks or misunderstands about me doesn't matter. Our friendship is supposed to end in middle school. I'm moving forward to realize my dreams. It's hard to believe that 10 years have flown by since then. I'm currently attending a middle school reunion. The organizer this time is Kevin. You know, I didn't really want to come because of his invitation, but I did want to see everyone else. Still, choosing a place like this, the high admission fee is a bit much. The words I hear from my classmates are a mix of appraisal and disapproval for today's event. We're in a banquet hall of a famous hotel in downtown. A regular bar would have made the fees more affordable, but Kevin, who volunteered to organize, insisted on this place. "David, long time no see. How have you been?" "Doing well, Michael." Speaking of Kevin. "Yeah, Kevin. Well, he's as strong-willed as ever, if not more so since middle school." "Strong-willed, huh?" It was clear from the classmates' comments and Michael's demeanor that this wasn't a compliment. I remember Kevin went to a prestigious high school after graduating from middle school. Michael was worried about him and decided to go to the same high school. Since Kevin chose a public school, I could make it my choice too. Kevin in high school, probably just as you imagine. It seems Kevin carried his worst tendencies from middle school into high school. Without hearing the details, I could imagine the struggles Michael faced during high school. Despite his behavior, Kevin, being smart, managed to get into a top national university. Michael, having set his sights solely on national universities, ended up at the same university as Kevin. Setting aside Michael's college hardships, they unbelievably ended up at the same company after graduating. Michael had always been interested in IT and aimed for a company in that field from the start, but Kevin also discovered IT and focused on getting into the same company as Michael. It seems Michael's troubles with Kevin continued even into their adult lives. I decided to attend today to take a break from work and catch up with old friends like Michael. I was trying to avoid Kevin as much as possible, but just as I stepped outside for some air, he approached me. "Look who it is, David. Surprised you're still around. This is a top-notch hotel. Seems a bit too upscale for a high school dropout, doesn't it?" "Thanks for the warm welcome, really." I rolled my eyes in my mind while mouthing a thank you. I graduated from a top university and landed a job at a leading IT company with a bang. That's out of reach for a dropout like you. You must be working at some small business or on a construction site. 10 years can really show the difference, huh? Seriously, no progress in 10 years. I'm the ace at my company now. Michael, who ended up at the same company by chance, is doing okay, but he's no match for me. Is ace another word for joker? Ignoring Kevin seemed to bother him, so he made an outrageous statement. Hey, look at that woman over there, she's quite something. Perfect for a successful guy like me. Let me show you how it's done. Indeed, there was a very attractive woman where Kevin pointed. Ignoring my warning not to do anything stupid, he practically skipped over to her. Feeling annoyed, I watched from a distance. Kevin seemed flustered after talking to the woman and came back looking defeated. She turned out to be a foreigner, speaking German all of a sudden. I'm fluent in German, but her accent was so thick I had to walk away. Fluent but can't understand a bit of accent. I don't think her accent was that bad. Actually, I'm pretty sure she didn't have one. Your turn, David. Go show her what you've got. Your high school level German won't cut it, but it's not like you've got women lining up anyway. Here's your chance. Kevin pushed me towards her, laughing obnoxiously. Annoyed, I brushed off his hand and approached the woman. Leah, what brings you here? There's still time left. David, well, I was free and thought I'd come pick you up. By the way, we're speaking English. We could speak German, but we're in the US, so we stick to English. By the way, is that guy you know, came up and hit on me out of nowhere, so I brushed him off in German. Let's just say he's a troublesome acquaintance. I left Leah and went back to Kevin to say, it seems she had plans, so I couldn't invite her. Did you actually communicate in German? No way. Ignoring Kevin's complaints, I decided to greet my classmates and head home. Of course, I didn't want to keep Leah waiting. Leah and I met in Germany, where we became reliable allies. After graduating middle school, I chose not to pursue high school. It wasn't due to a lack of academic ability or poverty, as Kevin suggested. I wanted to delve deeper into computer studies. With numerous IT certifications available, I became obsessed with acquiring them all. While attending a specialized school, I also took the GED on my father's advice. Juggling both was challenging, but I managed to succeed. Having obtained key IT certifications and conquered the GED, my sights were set on Germany, away from the US. I studied in Germany, eagerly absorbing foreign IT skills and knowledge. Looking back, I'm amazed at what I was able to achieve. I became completely engrossed in my pursuits. I believe that passion led to positive outcomes. In Germany, I met and befriended Leah. Leah is an American German who looks no different from an American but is thoroughly German. Sharing similar goals, Leah and I clicked. After graduating together, when I decided to join a company in the US, Leah also secured a position at the same company and came to America. All right, Leah, things are about to get busy. Looks like the reunion energized you, David. Okay, let's give it our all. And so, we embarked on our next goal. 5 years passed. We're at a party hosted by a certain company. It's a party to announce a new business venture and to introduce newly appointed board members. I'm not fond of such glamorous events, so I found myself idly leaning against a wall with a beer in hand. Why are you even here? Hearing a familiar voice, I turned to see Kevin standing there with a furious expression. Long time no see. Good to see you're doing well. Michael was also there, beside Kevin. Do you even know where you are? This is a party hosted by a leading IT company that's making waves in the industry. Yay, I know. So, why are you here at a major company's party? I was invited here. People like you, from the bottom rings, shouldn't be here. You lower the rank of this place. I'm going to be a big-time CEO with a $100 million investment from this major IT company. Saying that, Kevin tilted the beer glass he was holding over my head, pouring its contents onto me. Naturally, the beer cascaded over my head, dripping from my hair and chin. Despite this, I remained calm. For some reason, I had anticipated Kevin might do something like this. Wiping off the beer with a handkerchief, I said, "Then I guess that investment is cancelled." I smiled at Kevin while holding the handkerchief. "Huh?" Kevin looked puzzled, unsure if he understood what I said. "Anyway, the investment isn't even confirmed yet. It's funny you're acting as if it's already in your pocket. How could a company not invest in someone as talented as me? If you were truly talented, that might be the case. Michael, what do you think?" Well, that is. Michael has done well so far, but unfortunately, it seems the deal wasn't sealed. Maybe it's time to cut your losses." Michael looked troubled, and Kevin's anger didn't subside. As Kevin was about to say more, Leah came over, saying, "David, it's time for the greetings." "Right, sorry, Kevin, Michael, but I have some pressing matters to attend to. I'll be back after taking care of them. In the meantime, could you chat with some of my team?" As I stepped away, 3 men who had been lurking in the shadows approached the 2 individuals. At the event, the host began the narration. "Next, we have a greeting from the newly appointed director, David." I walked up to the stage and stood in front of the microphone. "Thank you for today. My name is David, and I'm honored to be introduced to you. Today, I'm excited to announce a new project that is crucial for our company's future. This project will be led by Mr. Michael Taylor as the chief executive, who is the planner behind it. This is..." While I was giving my speech, I couldn't hear it, but apparently, Kevin was making a scene, shouting, "What's going on? Why him? Why Michael?" After graduating from a university in Germany, I joined a company in the US, which was led by my father as the president and my mother as the vice president. It was a small IT company in the past, but now it has grown into a major player in the industry. My passion for computers was probably fueled by my father's encouragement. It was my father who allowed me to pursue IT instead of going to high school and suggested I take the general equivalency diploma in anticipation of what was to come. And it was he who sent me off to Germany. I always planned to return to the US after graduating and utilize my knowledge and skills in my father's company, but having Leah come back with me was a pleasant surprise. Because Leah is incredibly talented. The rapid growth of our company over the past 5 years is more attributable to Leah's efforts than my own. While I was able to use my technical skills, my father also entrusted me with finance-related tasks for my future learning. To further expand our company last year, we solicited new business plans through a competition open to external proposals. This selected project would receive up to $100 million in funding, with the proposer having the option to become independent or join our company. One of the applicants was Kevin, whose proposal was outstanding, but the supporting data and figures were severely lacking. Just when I thought something was amiss, Michael showed up. Michael was utterly astonished to encounter me, as he had never expected our paths to cross, but he then revealed the truth to me. The plan was originally mine. Kevin stole it from me. Kevin has always seen Michael as his subordinate, even to this day. He believes what belongs to his servant belongs to him. Just like you said before, David, this situation is wrong. I can't stay silent after what's been done to me. "Does that mean you've finally come to your senses?" I asked, and Michael nodded sadly. To my question, Michael nodded sadly. While I was greeting others, it seems my capable subordinate had a thorough talk with Kevin, and when I returned, Kevin was crouching on the floor, holding his head. What struck me deeply was Michael, standing a bit away, turning his face aside while trying to hold back tears. The issue of Kevin's plagiarism spread quickly within the industry. Kevin, who was fully intent on securing investment to start his own company and become its president, ended up tarnishing the company's reputation and was fired for his atrocious work ethic, as he hadn't been working properly, planning to resign anyway. Already disliked by colleagues for his high pride and obvious self-esteem, Kevin left the company without anyone to see him off. All this happened just half a month ago. Yet, in this half month, the new project has gotten off to a smooth start. This success is due to the efforts of the planner Michael and the support of the excellent Leah. I stretched out greatly on the couch sofa. My head feels a bit foggy, perhaps from journeying through memories, traveling from over 30 years ago to the present. Kevin had a friend like Michael, but he never realized the value of that friendship until it was too late, which led to his downfall. Without making any other friends to open up to and support him, he met a lonely end. I've always tried to cherish my friends. I wonder how much I've been helped by friends. Even when times were tough with ID and GED studies, it was the presence of friends that helped me overcome many challenges. Michael helped me a lot during those times. When I was struggling in unfamiliar Germany, Leah was there to help me. Leah also became a great support when I was working in the US. Cherishing friends is vital in life. A friend with whom you can share your heart and trust is the greatest treasure of all. As I gazed at the mountains outside the window, pondering these thoughts, I heard, "Daddy," my beloved daughter came jumping into my arms. "Hey there, Daddy is tired, so let's give him some time to rest." My wife, our daughter's mother, Leah, picked up our daughter. Ah, yes, Leah, once my friend, has now become someone even more precious. Hurry up, isn't it ready yet? I'm terribly sorry, please, wait just a little longer. Voices demanding meals could be heard from the surrounding rooms. Indeed, it was already past 7 in the evening. What on earth was going on? Then, the female hotel manager came to our private room as well and offered her apologies. Apparently, all the chefs had suddenly been poached by a major hotel, leaving only one apprentice chef to prepare the meals. It was impossible for a single apprentice chef to prepare a large amount of food. Then, my wife put her hand on my shoulder and gave me a signal. I stood up and headed to the kitchen. Little did I know at that moment, this decision would change the course of my life. My name is John Miller, 31 years old. I was just an ordinary guy, born to a chef father and a homemaker mother. My father worked as a chef in a high-end restaurant and would often teach me how to cook on his days off. Those cooking sessions with my busy father were precious moments for me. Even when I was still young, he let me handle a large knife and taught me how to slice beef. While my mother watched in surprise, she quietly observed us. My parents were supportive, letting me try anything I wanted without any objections. Eventually, my dream became to be a chef like my father. Knowing my dream, my father was as happy as if it were his own, teaching me various dishes almost every day. Watching us, my mother would always smile gently. "And John, you can become a wonderful chef," was always my mother's favorite thing to say. I loved my parents dearly. But the happiness didn't last. Suddenly, my high school received a call. My teacher urgently told me to go home. Wondering what had happened, I rushed home. I found my father in tears inside the house, and my mother was lying on the bed. My mother was already cold to the touch. It seemed to be a sudden heart attack. I called my mother's name over and over, but there was no response. After that day, my father threw himself even more into his work, and we talked less and less. I think he was also feeling the loneliness of my mother's sudden absence. And I began to feel like my own life didn't matter anymore. No matter how tough the days were, my father was not around because of work. My heart was broken by the loneliness of not having my mother around. After graduating high school, I didn't go to culinary school to become a chef but started working instead. Thanks to a recommendation from my high school, I landed a job at an international 5-star hotel. Getting such a wonderful job right out of high school was almost like a miracle. However, when I informed my father about my job offer, he just nodded sadly. He must have felt lonely at the thought of his only family member moving out. I left home when I got the job. It was too painful to continue living in a house filled with memories of my mother. When I was leaving, my father gave me a knife with my name engraved on it. I had planned to give this to you when you moved out. Make sure to cook for yourself and take care of your health, even when you're living alone. Thank you. I took the knife my father gave me and left home. With a heavy heart and complex feelings, I headed to my new place, carrying my substantial luggage. Working at the International 5-Star Hotel was exciting and enjoyable. It was fulfilling, and I even aspired to make a name for myself there. And then, one day, after such days had continued for 10 years, I received a call from my father. I'm going to have surgery, so I need you to sign a consent form. I turned pale. My father, having surgery. What was going on? I rushed to the hospital. In the hospital room bed, my father was lying down. Seeing my father for the first time in a while, I found he had aged considerably and looked like an elderly man. Although my father's surgery wasn't life-threatening, I decided then that I wanted to work close to him. So, I quit my hotel job of 10 years. My father looked at me with regret, but it couldn't be helped. I decided to switch jobs to a major hotel nearby. I was hired as a full-time janitor at the major hotel. I was relieved to have found re-employment. However, the job was harder than I had imagined. I was responsible for ensuring that the guests didn't experience any discomfort, meticulously cleaning the entrance, guest rooms, and more. I sweep carefully with a broom, then go over it with a vacuum cleaner. After that, I polish the floor meticulously with a cloth. I had never cleaned my own house this thoroughly. It was then that I truly understood how demanding it is to earn money. It was Ashley, a fellow new employee, who spoke to me at that time. Are you a new employee too? Cleaning is tough, isn't it? Ashley had her long hair tied back and her large eyes sparkled. I'm a new employee as well. Yeah, we have to clean even the smallest details. As Ashley and I complained, we continued our cleaning. Then, a loud voice echoed across the floor. Hey, you two, cut the chatter. John, your cleaning is too sloppy. Yes, I'm sorry. It was Mason, the person in charge of training new employees. Mason was a man about a decade older than me. He had taken a particular dislike to me, claiming I was the worst performer among the new employees. Do you even have any motivation? I'll straighten out your attitude. From then on, Mason's treatment of me worsened. He would deliberately mess up the rooms I had cleaned or make me clean the same area over and over again. Hey, incompetent, redo this area. But I just cleaned it a moment ago. What? Talking back to me? Mason always approached me with a domineering attitude. But as a new employee, I couldn't muster a response. Days like these continued, and I was exhausted both mentally and physically, but there was a silver lining. It was that Ashley and I started dating. As fellow newcomers, we naturally had a lot to talk about. Our tastes in food and TV programs were identical, so it was only natural that we ended up together. After we started dating, I became more positive about things. I think it's because Ashley's positivity contagiously affected me in a good way. And after a while, Ashley and I decided to get married. Turns out, Ashley was pregnant with my child. Ashley couldn't continue working due to her condition, so she decided to quit her job. She didn't want to leave her job, as she was proud of her work and enjoyed it, but it couldn't be helped. In response, I decided to work even harder. Mason gave a puzzled look when he heard Ashley was quitting. And then, glaring at me, he said, "Ashley is good at her job. If anyone should quit, it should be you." But there was nothing I could do. Ashley was suffering from severe morning sickness. It was so bad that she couldn't even eat. Worried, I looked up food she could possibly eat and decided to cook for her. Ashley loves vegetables. I thought I'd make a dish that highlighted the flavors of the vegetables to make it easier for her to eat. As I was thinking about this, I busied myself with cooking. Before I knew it, the meal was ready and placed on the table. Ashley's eyes lit up. "John, that's amazing. You're even more skilled than I am. I'm impressed." She started eating right away. She ate it as if it was delicious. Despite saying she couldn't eat because of the morning sickness, she finished everything quickly, which made me happy. Then, with a curious look, Ashley asked me, "How come you're so good at cooking, John? You're way better than me." I realized I hadn't told Ashley about this and decided to share. I took a deep breath. "You know, I once dreamed of becoming a chef. Remember, my dad is a chef, right? I used to learn a lot about cooking from him when I was little." Hearing this, Ashley nodded. She seemed satisfied with my explanation for being good at cooking. From then on, I took over the cooking duties for the unwell Ashley. Ashley always said the meals I made were delicious. So, cooking became a way for me to relax. And there was good news at work too. Mason, who had been treating me poorly and saying I was incompetent, was transferred to a different luxury hotel. Since Mason had always looked down on me and said awful things, his absence significantly reduced my stress levels. Since Mason was transferred and no longer around, I was able to work more freely at the workplace. And then 6 months passed. I was at the hospital where Ashley was admitted. Today, I was finally going to become a father. Ashley was in the delivery room, and I was anxiously waiting for our baby's birth. I hoped for the health of both mother and child. That's what I prayed for as I waited. Then the moment came. I could hear the cries of a baby from the delivery room. And the midwife came to me, holding the baby. "It's a girl. Congratulations." I received the baby from the midwife and held her in my arms. The tiny, soft baby was wide-eyed, looking around. I felt she resembled me in some way. So, I'm a father now. "Hello there, I'm your daddy." I spoke to the baby. She stared back at me intently. So adorable. While I was admiring the baby, a familiar voice reached my ears. "John, congratulations." It was my dad's voice. I turned around immediately. And there he was, standing. "Dad, what are you doing here?" Ashley told me. When Ashley and I decided to get married, I had only informed my dad about the marriage, but he hadn't met Ashley yet. That was because he was busy with work, and we didn't have the chance to meet up. I didn't want to interrupt my dad's work. However, Ashley had secretly informed my dad about the birth without telling me. I was touched by Ashley's thoughtfulness. My father looked lovingly at the baby, his grandchild, squinting his eyes. "She's adorable. She looks just like you when you were a baby. May I hold her?" I handed my daughter to my father. Tears streamed down his face as he held her. I was happy to see this. After a while, Ashley came out of the delivery room in a wheelchair. Seeing my father and me together, she smiled. I rushed to Ashley's side. I had something important to tell her. "Ashley, thank you for our beautiful baby, and for letting my father know." I looked into Ashley's eyes and expressed my heartfelt gratitude. Tears naturally rolled down my cheeks. Ashley, wiping away my tears, laughed and said, "Oh, look at you, the crybaby dad. My father laughed too, standing beside us. My father named our daughter Emily. That was Ashley's earnest wish. Ashley expressed her deepest thanks to my father for naming our daughter. I decided to take 2 weeks off from my hotel job to take care of Ashley and our daughter Emily. Those 2 weeks spent with Ashley and Emily were incredibly joyful. Every day, I cooked meals for Ashley. With every meal, Ashley would eat and express how delicious it was, moved by the taste. Cooking is really enjoyable. That's what I thought. When my leave ended and I returned to work after a long absence, the hotel manager introduced me to a man. It was, unmistakably, Mason. Mason hadn't changed at all from 6 months ago. Why was Mason, who was supposed to have been transferred, here? I had a bad feeling about this. Little did I know at that moment how right my bad feeling would turn out to be. I am Mason, the chief manager. I'm glad to be back at this hotel after a long time. I look forward to working rigorously again with all of you. I was shocked that Mason was assigned to this hotel again. Moreover, he got promoted and is now the chief manager. Well, he probably doesn't even remember me. With that thought, I returned to my station and started working. Then, Mason approached me and started saying something surprising. "Hey, incompetent. You still can't even clean properly. You're insolent for someone so incompetent." I thought the nightmare was repeating itself. I hadn't imagined that Mason would remember me and call me incompetent again. I looked down and simply said, "I'm sorry." Mason snorted with laughter and said, "A useless person is no good at anything," before walking away from me. I was seething inside, but I knew there was no point in defying Mason. It was better to keep quiet for my own sake. I sighed as I made my way home. I was completely exhausted. The next day at work, Mason was already waiting for me. "You're late. Clean every corner of this floor. We have important guests coming today." Mason seemed more on edge than usual. "A 5-star chef is coming to our hotel." My colleague whispered the information in my ear. "Really? What is a chef from a 5-star hotel coming here?" As I wondered, my colleague whispered again. "He's planning to recruit new chefs, aiming to poach a few from renowned 5-star hotels." Poaching, huh? Well, it has nothing to do with me. I followed Mason's orders and cleaned every corner of the floor with my colleagues. I intended to be careful to ensure not even a speck of dust was left on the handrails or shelves. However, Mason, looking irritated, approached me. "Can't you even do a simple cleaning job? There's still dust left. We're running out of time. Hurry up." That couldn't be. I had cleaned thoroughly just before, but irritated, I started cleaning again. Then, voices came from the hotel's entrance. Glancing over, I saw famous chefs, the kind you'd see on TV or in magazines, talking with Mason. One of the chefs glanced my way, and I instinctively looked down to avoid eye contact. Then, Mason and the chefs headed towards the hotel's kitchen. I've heard that hotels are struggling with their finances due to rising costs. Therefore, to become even slightly more popular than other hotels, differentiation from the rest is essential. Our hotel must be trying to differentiate itself through its restaurant. I thought about the hotel's management troubles as if it were someone else's problem. And again on this day, when I came home exhausted, my father was somehow at home for some reason. And Ashley was grinning. "What's going on?" Seeing the two of them like that gave me the creeps. Then Ashley leaned in and asked, "Do you know what day it is today?" My mind was filled with question marks. Today is, oh right. I hesitantly opened my mouth. Today is our wedding anniversary. I'm really sorry I forgot. Ashley laughed at my apologetic tone. It's okay, You've been busy with work. You've been so exhausted lately. It doesn't feel like an anniversary. Ashley had been paying close attention to me and was worried. Let's go to that traditional, well-established hotel restaurant you've always wanted to try. I've asked your dad to look after Emily for today. Ashley showed me the dinner tickets she had. They were from Dylan, a friend from the days when I worked at a 5-star hotel. I had always wanted to go, but we never found a time to our busy schedules. But I wondered, could my father really take care of Emily by himself? I started to worry. Sensing my concern, my father said, "I've taken care of you when you were a baby, hadn't I? Go out and enjoy yourselves for a change," he said with a smile. Taking my father's words to heart, Ashley and I decided to go. "Thanks, Dad. We'll be off then." Ashley and I left the house hand in hand. It had been a long time since we went out, just the two of us. It's been a year since we got married. Time flies. I felt truly fortunate to have married Ashley. With a deep sense of happiness, we entered the traditional hotel's restaurant. The atmosphere was different from the luxury hotel where I worked, and the building was full of charm with a well-established feel. Upon showing our dinner tickets at the reception, we were led to a beautiful private room with a view of the garden. It seemed all seating in this restaurant was private, befitting an established hotel. Ashley and I were in awe of the room's opulence. After a while, Dylan came to greet us. Dylan was still as handsome as ever. "John, it's been a while. Thanks for coming to our hotel. Make yourselves comfortable." "Thanks. We're looking forward to the meal." Dylan left with a smile. This traditional hotel was run by Dylan's parents before he took over. Its cuisine is renowned, even featured in the Michelin Guide. Dylan was always hard-working, even during his time at the 5-star hotel. The hotel's popularity is undoubtedly due to Dylan's efforts. We couldn't wait to see what dishes would be served. Ashley and I couldn't wait. We were so excited. But no matter how long we waited, there was no sign of our meal arriving. I glanced at the clock. It was already past 7 in the evening. Understanding it was a busy hour, Ashley and I patiently waited. Then, we heard a familiar voice from the next private room. "This is taking forever. Are the chefs asleep in the kitchen?" This voice, it was Mason. I held my head in my hands. I didn't want to spend this wonderful time, even in a private room, next to Mason. Ashley looked at me worriedly as I held my head in my hands. Reluctantly, I explained the situation about Mason to her. Ashley then said, "Let's ignore him," and held my hand reassuringly. My heart gradually calmed down. But then, Mason's voice was heard again. "Hurry up, isn't it ready yet?" "Very sorry, it'll just be a little longer, please." Not just from Mason, but we started hearing impatient calls for food from other rooms as well. It had been over an hour since Ashley and I began waiting for our meal. What was going on? As I was pondering this, Dylan came over. All our chefs were poached by a major hotel chain. Only an apprentice is left in the kitchen. This could be the end for our traditional hotel. "John, please help us." Dylan was at a loss. Then Ashley placed her hand on my shoulder and said, "John, I think you're the only one who can help." Looking at Ashley in surprise, she met my gaze with determination. "I know everything, John. It's your time to shine." So, Ashley knew all along. Then there's no need to hide it anymore. I stood up. "Dylan, lead me to the kitchen." I rushed to the kitchen. In the kitchen, a young apprentice chef was frantically cooking alone. Dylan handed me an apron. I quickly washed my hands and put on the apron. Looking at the ingredients laid out, I immediately started cooking. The apprentice chef followed my instructions perfectly. Watching my technique, Dylan muttered, "That's the John I know." In no time, several dishes were ready, and the staff began delivering them to the private rooms. Soon after, sounds of amazement came from the rooms. "Wow, this is delicious. What is this? I've never tasted anything this good before." But the cooking was far from over. I kept creating new dishes, one after another. The apprentice chef was astounded by my skills. "Who exactly are you?" While moving as I instructed, the apprentice chef threw a question at me. I answered his question directly. "I used to be the head chef at a 5-star hotel overseas." The apprentice chef dropped the radish he was holding. "What, really? Don't drop the food on the floor. Keep moving, don't stop." "Yes, sir." Indeed, my previous job was as the head chef at an overseas 5-star hotel. I started working at a 5-star hotel right after high school. Initially, I was part of the wait staff, but one day, while preparing staff meals, Mike, the head chef at the time, saw potential in me as a chef. Probably because my father had taught me how to cook when I was young. After several years as an apprentice, I was appointed head chef at an overseas 5-star hotel. Honestly, I was surprised to become the head chef, something I had never imagined, but seeing people moved by my cooking made me happy. However, I was worried about leaving my father alone in America since I was working overseas. To me, my father was just as important as cooking. I could continue cooking even if not at a 5-star hotel. Reluctantly, I resigned from the head chef position. I had never told Ashley about my background. It wasn't that I was hiding it, it was just hard to bring up. When I later asked how she knew about my past as a head chef, she said my father had told her. That made sense to me. While reminiscing about the past, I continued to cook relentlessly with the apprentice chef. Now only the dessert remained. Today's dessert was a chocolate mousse. I plated the already prepared mousse and started decorating it. It had been a while since I used luxurious plates for plating. It seems my skills hadn't dulled. I decorated a chocolate mousse as if it were a piece of art. Dylan and the apprentice chef watched me decorate, moved by the sight. The beautifully decorated mousse was carried by the staff to the private rooms where guests were waiting. All the dishes were successfully completed. Dylan, who had watched me cook, and the apprentice chef, who had assisted me, applauded. I showed respect to the two of them. I was exhausted from preparing a full course after such a long time. Dylan, with tears in his eyes, said, "John, you really saved us today. Thank you." I was glad to have been of help to Dylan. It was a brief moment, but I enjoyed cooking for the guests again. I was actually thankful to Dylan for giving me this valuable experience. I took off my apron and was about to return to the room where Ashley was waiting. But a staff member approached me with a worried expression. In a flurry, he said, "A guest has requested to meet the chef who prepared today's meal." Indeed, I was the one who prepared the meal today, but I'm not the official chef of this traditional hotel. It wouldn't be appropriate for someone like me to greet the guests. Then Dylan rushed over. "If you don't mind, John, could you greet the guests?" Dylan, who looked at me with pleading eyes, is one of my few friends. Thinking it would help Dylan, I decided I could at least make a greeting. I stood up. The staff member guided me to the private room where the guest had requested my presence. It was the room next to the one where Ashley and I had been. Could this room be? I had a bad feeling about this. "Excuse me." The staff member opened the door to the private room. Inside were Mason and the 5-star hotel chefs who had visited our place today. It was Mason, as I had feared. I tried not to make eye contact. Mason, not realizing it was me, began to speak. "Your cooking was marvelous. Each dish was meticulously crafted, and all were exquisite. Would you consider becoming the exclusive chef at my hotel? I was speechless, shocked by Mason's praise. I never imagined Mason would commend my cooking like this. Dylan, listening from behind, was also surprised. I looked down, unsure of how to respond. Then, suddenly, he leaned in to get a better look at my face. "You're John." Mason was wide-eyed with astonishment. "Why are you here? Did you make those dishes?" Hesitantly, in a soft voice, I said, "Due to various circumstances, I prepared those dishes," and Mason looked at me incredulously. "No way. How could someone as incompetent as you create such delicate dishes? Stop joking around." Mason's loud voice echoed throughout the private room. Then the five-star hotel chef sitting with Mason stared intently at my face. It seemed like he suddenly remembered something. "Aren't you John, the head chef?" The five-star chef looked at me with shining eyes. I still vividly remember. We had met when I was still the head chef at an overseas five-star hotel. Back then, he was an apprentice chef and assisted me. The five-star chef, now brimming with confidence, had a different demeanor back then. That's why I always encouraged him. Mason, puzzled by the revelation, asked the five-star hotel chef, "What's going on here?" Mason seemed to be in a state of panic. It's understandable. He couldn't easily believe that someone he thought was just an employee turned out to be a chef. Then, the chef from the five-star hotel explained to Mason that I had once been the head chef at a five-star hotel. Mason accidentally dropped a glass he was holding. "Back then, your dishes were revolutionary in their deliciousness and became quite the talk. I'm truly thrilled to have tasted those dishes today." "That's impossible." Mason seemed unwilling to believe that I, whom he had looked down upon, was a top-class chef. Then, the five-star hotel chef made a surprising offer. "John, meeting here must be fate. Won't you join me in cooking at the five-star hotel's restaurant again?" Me, cooking again? It was an incredibly flattering offer. I definitely wanted to cook again. However, I worried that becoming busy again might mean neglecting Ashley and my daughter. Then, Ashley, who had been listening to my conversation from the next private room, quietly emerged. She looked at me and whispered, "John, you never know when you'll get another chance like this. It's okay to think about yourself more than me." I made up my mind. I told the chef from the five-star hotel restaurant, "I'd love to, but there's a place that needs me more. I'm sorry." The five-star hotel chef nodded in disappointment. The position of head chef at a five-star hotel restaurant could be filled by someone other than me. But I felt that only I could be the chef this traditional hotel needed. Those present were astonished by my decision. But Ashley was smiling. "Dylan, I want to protect the cuisine of this hotel. Will you let me be the head chef?" Dylan was moved to tears by my words. "You, a distinguished chef, are willing to protect my hotel, even if it's not a five-star hotel." Dylan confirmed with me several times. But my mind was made up. After a while, I firmly quit my job as a cleaner at the luxury hotel. Then, I officially started working as the head chef at Dylan's hotel. From menu development to ingredient sourcing, I spared no effort in crafting top-quality dishes. Thanks to this, the hotel's restaurant quickly became extremely popular. That's not all. The hotel was fully booked. Eventually, we even started receiving media coverage, and before we knew it, we became a five-star hotel. It was some time after I started working as a chef at this hotel. I was about to leave work as usual when I encountered Mason waiting for me. Why was Mason here? I intended to ignore him, but he approached me. "Would you consider becoming a chef at my hotel? I'll offer you good terms, With your cooking, my hotel is sure to become very popular. I was surprised to see Mason, who had always looked down on me, now turning the tables as if nothing had happened. At the same time, I knew I definitely didn't want to work at a hotel with someone like him. I cannot work for someone who belittles and underestimates others. With that, I left the scene. Mason was left standing there, dumbfounded. And just like that, a year flew by. I continued to focus on developing new menus. Now, our hotel has become so popular that reservations are booked 3 years in advance. Thanks to Dylan's consideration, I occasionally bring Ashley, my daughter, and my father to the hotel to enjoy the cuisine. I hope to continue creating delicious dishes that both my family and our guests will appreciate. Michael, there's something I need to tell you. Wait a minute. It's been a year since my wife passed away. I couldn't refuse when my father-in-law asked me to marry her sister, so I agreed. But as soon as we started living together, I was speechless at the sight of my sister-in-law. I didn't know how much my wife and I owed to this person, and that ignorance was not an excuse. I am Michael. I work at a major corporation. I've been working at this company since I graduated, and 5 years later, I married Heather, a colleague who joined at the same time. It might seem like a normal romance to others, but for me, it was a great love. She was famous for being the most beautiful new employee when she joined. Her features were distinct, and her smile was adorable. Additionally, her casual gestures were very elegant, and her manner of speaking was effortlessly graceful. There were rumors that she must be a lady from a very good family. We were assigned to the same department, so for a while, I worked at the desk next to hers. At first, I was so nervous about working next to such a beauty that we hardly ever spoke outside of work-related matters. I think I was just another colleague to her. Despite our superficial relationship, things changed a bit after the welcome party for new employees. I'm not very good at drinking, so I politely declined the invitation to the after party for my seniors, wanting to go to bed early, and headed to the station. That's when she called out to me from behind, "Michael. Heather, aren't you going to the after party?" I turned it down. Everyone's drunk, and besides, it's karaoke bar, right? I'm not good at singing, and I don't like it, so I'm going home too. Can I walk to the station with you? Yeah, of course. Despite never having had a proper conversation before, suddenly walking together, I wasn't sure what to talk about. At first, I thought so, but unexpectedly, we clicked, or something, and we naturally fell into easy conversation, and before I knew it, we had arrived at the station. It turned out we were on the same line and going in the same direction. In that case, let's ride together. Sounds good. It would have been awkward to part ways there, so we ended up taking the train together naturally. We talked the whole time until she got off at her stop. After that, at work, we would say hi, chat about silly things, and whenever there was a drinking party, it became a standard thing for us to leave early together. She had many suitors, but I never saw her agree to go out with any of them. Seeing her smile made me smile too. The time we spent talking about trivial things gradually became something precious to me. Eventually, our relationship became the subject of rumors, and the seniors started teasing us. "Michael, you and Heather have been looking pretty close lately, huh? And you two are dating." I ended up being teased. But by that time, I had already developed feelings for her, so I was actually happy to hear that others thought so too. I wanted to ask her out. I wanted to tell her how I felt. I wanted to be more than just colleagues, not just companions on the way back from drinking parties, but to have a relationship where we could meet without any reason. But at the same time, I knew I had many rivals. Heather's getting cuter by the day, isn't she? I know. I heard the guys from the sales department are after her too. Seriously. I can count how many times I sighed when I overheard such conversations in the bathroom. But I couldn't keep my feelings to myself any longer. When a year had passed since we joined a company, I finally decided to ask her out. However, on the day I expressed my feelings, she seemed happy for a moment, but then her face clouded over. I also like you, Michael, but I can't date you. Why is that? There's something I've been keeping a secret from you and everyone else. What she revealed to me was a shocking truth. The truth is, my father is the president of this company. What? I'm sorry for keeping it a secret until now. I didn't want to be seen just as the president's daughter, so I begged my father to let me join the company in secret. I thought no one would see me for who I am if they knew. Certainly, if people had known she was the president's daughter, the seniors wouldn't have casually talked to her or invited her to drinking parties. I want to date you too, Michael, but ever since I was little, I've been told that I would eventually have an arranged marriage. So even if we were to date, there's no future in it. I can't nod in agreement knowing that. I'm truly sorry. She said that and ran away. But I didn't give up there. Knowing everything, I talked to her once again. Even if it's just for a little while, I want to be with you as long as possible. I don't mind if you leave me when it's time for you to get married. I won't hold a grudge, I promise. So please. I wanted her that badly. I loved her that much. Heather nodded, and that's how our relationship began. We were both busy with work, and even on days off, Heather often got invited to parties, so we didn't have many days we could spend together. But on the rare occasions we had time, going on leisurely dates or relaxing at home, those simple moments were incredibly happy, and I often wished they could last forever. But no matter how happy those times were, we knew there was no future for us. So we cherished every day we had together. Then, one day, Heather surprised me by saying, "I want you to meet my father." Heather's eyes were moist. She looked like she might cry at any moment, but it didn't seem like she was sad. "My father found out I have a boyfriend and he really wants to meet you." But I thought it was pointless to meet him. To that, Heather whispered, "It's different. My father said, if I truly think this is the only person for me, then he would consider our future together. He wants to see what kind of person you are, seriously, not just casually dating." Does that mean? Yes, maybe. We might not have to break up. Maybe we can even get married in the future. I don't want to marry anyone but you. I don't want an arranged marriage. If I get married, I want it to be to you. So please, will you meet my father? It was completely unexpected. Her words raced through my mind. Could I possibly marry Heather? Could we really stay together? Even next year, the year after, and beyond. Just thinking about it made me so happy I was at a loss for words. Seeing me like that, Heather finally started crying, and I hugged her. "I'll meet him. Of course, I will. In fact, please let me. Please let me meet your father." That's what I asked for. When I actually met him, he was very friendly. He was different from the president I saw at the company, showing a fatherly side. I was nervous throughout and can't clearly remember what I said. But I do remember him saying, "Heather is an irreplaceable daughter to me, but I also care deeply about the company. Therefore, the person Heather marries is very important to the company as well. Do you understand?" Yes. "And if you were to marry Heather, there's a good chance you could be my successor, but that's not something you can take lightly. Are you prepared for that?" I remember looking straight at him and saying, "Of course." If it meant I could be with Heather forever, I was ready to face any challenge. Heather was that irreplaceable to me. He smiled happily at my immediate response. The atmosphere remained warm, and the conversation flowed. At the end, he said, "Take good care of my daughter. and we shook hands firmly, a memory that remains vivid in my mind. Essentially, those words were tantamount to giving us their blessing for our marriage. Hand in hand, we walked home together. Then I proposed to her. We were joyously able to become husband and wife. After such a grand love story, we were living a blissful married life. But tragedy struck suddenly. A few years into our marriage, Heather was hit by a car that ran a red light while crossing the street, and she never returned. When I received a call from the police, I couldn't comprehend what they were saying at all. What? She was no longer here. When I saw her body covered with a white cloth, I finally understood. Heather, why are you lying there? Let's go home, okay? Come on, hold Madison like you always do. Hey, Heather, please, open your eyes, Heather. She looked so peaceful. She appeared as though she was just sleeping. This happened just 3 months after Heather gave birth to our first daughter, Madison. It was an accident that occurred while she went out to buy diapers, saying we were running low, and I was watching Madison. Only Madison's cries, seeking her mother in my arms, echoed in the room, and all I could do was break down in tears. Due to the suddenness of our parting, I was almost in a daze during the wake and the funeral. I kept staring at her photo on the altar, wondering why Heather wasn't beside me, as tears involuntarily spilled out. I couldn't accept it, couldn't make sense of it. Why did this have to happen? If only I had gone to buy them at that time. If I had stopped Heather. Or if I had bought the diapers on my way home from work. My mind was filled with these what-ifs, and I felt like my consciousness was sinking deeper into a dark abyss. Even though the attendees offered their condolences, I could hardly respond. Madison. Hearing Madison cry in my arms, as if she was calling for her mom, made me break down crying again, even though it was impossible. But crying forever wouldn't help. Heather was no longer here. But Madison was in my arms. She's here. I have to protect her. I have to raise her. Madison is a treasure for both me and Heather. Heather is no longer here. So, I decided to dedicate my life to raising her. To cherish her while loving Heather. That's when Heather's parents offered for us to live together. But at that time, I was so engulfed in despair that I couldn't hear anything, only thinking that I had to be strong, that I had to raise Madison, and I couldn't give a proper response. I will raise her. Although I was determined, the reality of a single father working while raising an infant was far more challenging than the word difficult could describe. Housework wasn't an issue since Heather and I had shared the chores, and I had mostly taken care of them. But this was my first time taking care of a child alone. Diaper changes were still not perfect, and Madison would end up crying. Even when we made our park debut, it was mostly moms there, so as a man, I inevitably felt out of place. Where's the mom? I would be asked casually, and knowing that any answer would just make them feel awkward, I couldn't respond well, ending up troubling the other person. Gradually, loneliness built up, and I became more and more distressed. Above all, the hardest part was feeding time. Heather had been exclusively breastfeeding Madison. Fortunately, we didn't need to buy formula milk, as Heather cherished the breastfeeding moments very much. But after Heather was gone, we were forced to switch to formula milk abruptly. As a result, Madison refused the bottle, making it difficult for her to stay hydrated. I just wanted her to drink. I wanted her to drink by any means necessary. But my haste led to nothing going right. Gradually, my anxiety seemed to transfer to Madison, leading to a vicious cycle where no matter what I tried, she wouldn't stop crying. I also faced tough days at work. It was known that Heather was the daughter of the company's president and that I was a potential successor after we got married. There were expectations from those around us. I had my own challenges I wanted to tackle and many things I wanted to learn under the president. But the daycares I could send her to, including the one at the company, wouldn't take her until she was at least 6 months old. Relying on my parents had its limits. Balancing both was nearly impossible. I decided to take parental leave until Madison could be admitted to daycare. However, seeing businessmen in suits heading to work while I was taking Madison to the park or the supermarket made me anxious. I needed to get back to work soon. But thinking of Madison, it seemed I couldn't return yet. "Michael, how about we go for a meal together with Madison once things settle down?" I received such messages from colleagues, but their pure kindness felt incredibly heavy at the time. When will things settle down? When can I return? If only Heather were here. The loneliness without Heather, the unfamiliarity with childcare, the rush to return to work, and the growing solitude. Filled with an uncertain future, I felt cornered to the brink of breaking down. Eventually, I was so stressed that I developed a rash all over my body, resembling hives. A year had passed in such a lifestyle, when I was suddenly summoned by my father-in-law, Mr. Wilson, and headed to my in-law's house. "How may I help you?" As I asked while having tea in the living room, he said, "Actually, I have a proposal for you, Michael, which is why I asked you to come." "A proposal?" "Yes, Yolanda, come in." At his call, a woman who closely resembled Heather entered the living room. It was Heather's sister, Yolanda. "It's been a while, Michael." "Yolanda, it's been a while." "Yolanda, have a seat." "Michael, may I get straight to the point?" "Yes." As Yolanda sat across from me, my father-in-law, with a resolved expression, began to speak. "Actually, I'd like to ask you to take care of Yolanda, that's what I'm thinking." What could that mean? As I asked for clarification, he said, "I want you to marry Yolanda," leaving me speechless. "Michael, please." "No, what?" "Please." "But, I'm not thinking about love or marriage anymore, and even though I think Yolanda is wonderful, I still love Heather. I understand how much you cherished and loved my sister. I know it painfully well. That's why I don't need love or romance. You don't have to love me. I just want to be by your side. Please, make me your wife, please." "Yolanda, if marriage is not an option, I don't mind just living together. So please, I beg of you." Her earnestness made me wonder if there was some deeper reason behind her request. But what would Heather think if I agreed to this? Would she be sad in heaven? With that thought, it was hard to say yes. Yet, considering it was a request from Yolanda, whom Heather adored, it was also hard to outright say no. With this new dilemma, I was at my wit's end. At that moment, perhaps sensing the serious atmosphere or the heavy air, Madison began to cry loudly. My mother-in-law tried to soothe her for a while, but with no success. Let me take over," I said as I took Madison to calm her down. But even in my arms, she wouldn't stop crying, and I was at a loss. "May I hold Madison?" Yolanda asked. Yes, of course." Surprised by her request, I hesitantly handed Madison over to Yolanda, and to my amazement, she stopped crying immediately. Oh. She stopped crying. Both my in-laws and I were astonished, but Yolanda looked at Madison with such a tender, maternal gaze, as if she were her own child. It was like seeing a true mother-daughter pair, and in Yolanda's presence, I felt as if Heather was there. The familiar sense of Heather's presence brought back a wave of nostalgia, pain, and sorrow. Ashamedly, tears blurred my vision. "Yolanda." "Yes." "I've decided, let's get married." I resolved to marry Yolanda. Before we married, we started living together as a first step. On the first night, "Michael, there's something I need to tell you," she said as she began to undress, catching me off guard. "Wait, hold on, I tried to stop her in a panic, but then I was taken aback. Yolanda revealed a back scarred with painful-looking burn marks. "Yolanda, what happened?" I couldn't help but ask, despite knowing it was a rude question. "Do you remember the explosion at the company's factory that happened around the time you and my sister got engaged?" "Of course, I remember. The accident where you saved Heather, right?" "Yes, officially, it ended with me saving her, but in reality, part of the burning factory collapsed on us. I instinctively protected my sister, but the debris fell on my back. I was fortunate to survive without life-threatening injuries. I don't regret saving my sister. Since that injury, I've been scared to pursue romantic relationships, which led me to give up on the idea of marriage." "So, that's what happened. The explosion at the factory. That was an accidental incident caused by a new employee mixing the wrong chemicals. The factory was completely destroyed. The fire spread rapidly, injuring many. At that time, Heather and Yolanda were visiting the factory for inspection and got caught in the accident. I was beside myself with worry, thinking only of Heather's safety. When I learned that Yolanda had saved her, I was overwhelmed with gratitude and wanted to thank her, but Yolanda refused, saying it would be too embarrassing, and I never got the chance to express my gratitude directly. But to think that it wasn't just embarrassment but the injury that kept her from appearing in public. It's too late to realize now. I know that. But still, I'm truly sorry, and thank you for protecting Heather back then. Even if it was just for my own satisfaction, I had to express my gratitude. It's not about apologies or gratitude. That's not what's important. Yes, my injury was painful, but I have no regrets about protecting my sister. I'm confident that if faced with the same situation, I would act the same way without hesitation. Saving her is something I take pride in. Yolanda, my proposal to you was born out of my selfishness. I wanted to care for Madison, whom my sister left behind, out of my own selfish desires. I couldn't stand to watch the man my sister loved grow increasingly weary. Imagining my sister's sadness at seeing your current state made it unbearable for me. I wanted to help you return to work sooner. I wanted to support you so you could dedicate yourself fully to both Madison and your job without strain. I wanted to revive the spirit of the man my sister loved. That's why I persuaded my father to arrange this meeting." Yolanda's words deeply resonated with me. I'm quite a bit younger than my sister, so when our parents were busy, she practically raised me. If I was afraid of the dark, she joined me in bed every night, always singing a lullaby before reading me a storybook, despite her own fatigue. Without a single complaint, she'd stay awake smiling until I fell asleep. She hugged me countless times during tough, sad, or lonely moments and shared in my joys. I loved my sister more than anyone else. She was the most important person to me. Heather often said the same. She considered you more precious than anything else, more like a daughter than a sister. She felt the same loneliness when your parents were busy, and taking care of you was her solace. Being with you made her loneliness vanish. Just looking at your sleeping face gave her the strength to persevere through hardships. For Heather, you were an irreplaceable treasure. Heather, I'm well aware of how deeply you loved Heather, and I know you cherish Madison too, but that doesn't mean you should sacrifice your own life. Marrying me for Heather's sake is absolutely not right. Michael, I too hastily agreed to marry, and I'm truly sorry. Let's not go through with the marriage, okay? I regretted consenting to the marriage, especially since I felt as if I saw Heather and Yolanda. It was a disservice to Yolanda. What was I thinking? Convinced by my argument, Yolanda agreed not to marry me. When we informed my in-laws of our decision not to marry, they seemed surprisingly relieved. Seeing Yolanda in tears, apologizing and saying, "I'm sorry for being selfish and causing trouble for everyone," I too felt relieved. Although we called off the marriage, Madison and I decided to live with my in-laws. Yolanda also lived there and agreed to help care for Madison until she was older, along with my mother-in-law. They persuaded me that raising her in a large family with many caring adults was best. I had almost dismissed this proposal during the funeral, so revisiting it was an eye-opener. Our lives visibly changed after we started living together. Primarily, Yolanda's assistance with Madison enabled me to return to work. I adore Madison. She's my most precious. However, having personal time after returning to work helped me reset mentally. Raising an infant always involves constant vigilance. As a result, parents are always on alert. The moment that tension eased, I felt a significant relief. I could also view my lifestyle objectively. Though I believed I was doing well, I realized in hindsight that I could have leaned on others more. Indeed, Madison became more expressive than when I was struggling alone. Work-wise, a lengthy hiatus could make it difficult to regain one's rhythm. However, my relatively swift return allowed me to resume my duties smoothly. I'm even slated to begin formal training as the successor to the company president soon. I once inquired with my father-in-law about the possibility of medical treatment improving Yolanda's burn scars. However, current medical treatments couldn't fully heal such scars, especially since Yolanda had other burns besides those on her back. She showed me the scars on her back because they were the most prominent and easiest to understand, but it seems difficult to remove them all. Initially, Yolanda was quite reluctant about romance, but as I persistently assured her, "You should be proud of those scars. I want you to be proud of them for Heather's sake too. Thank you sincerely for protecting her," she gradually became more positive. My in-laws are now seeking a suitable match for Yolanda, someone who fully understands and embraces her past. She seems happy, having found someone she gets along with and occasionally going out to eat with. Yolanda has been proactively taking care of household chores and looking after Madison at my in-laws' home. I'm confident she'll make a wonderful wife, so I hope she finds happiness with a good partner. As for me, I was officially announced as the next company president shortly after my return. I've been working harder than ever, breathed by encouragement from those around me, and feeling the weight of my father-in-law's expectations and his stern yet loving guidance. Now is the time to meet those expectations. Madison is thriving in the large family environment and has even started talking recently. Although it's often hard to understand her babbling, the first time she called me daddy, I was moved to tears. Despite many challenges, that one word made everything worthwhile. However, due to my training, work has become busier, and I've had regrettably less time with Madison lately. I'm worried that Madison might forget me if this continues. Yet, seeing her adorable sleeping face every night brings me happiness. Months after we started living together, we all went to visit Heather's grave. Despite the courtesy of my in-laws to allow Heather to be placed in my family grave, I prepared a new one for her, wanting her to rest peacefully in heaven, away from my ancestors. The grave is in a beautiful, refreshing spot surrounded by lush lawns, where the sunlight is soft and the breeze is gentle. The air is fresh, flowers bloom wildly, making it a beautiful place. I plan to be laid to rest here when I go to heaven, to share with Heather the story of my life. It's a small dream I can share with anyone. I almost laugh at myself as I arrange the flowers I brought and clean the tombstone. I came to see you again this year, Heather, I say, joining my hands and closing my eyes to update her on recent events. I talk about work, my in-laws, Yolanda, starting to live together, and Madison. After finishing, I call Madison over. "Come here, Madison." "Heather, this is Madison. She's grown, hasn't she? Your mommy is resting here." "Mommy?" Madison asks. "Yes, your mommy. Say hello. I encourage her. Madison seems unsure but greets after a moment of thought, making us all smile with her cuteness. After Madison and I finish our updates, my in-laws and Yolanda also pay their respects. I look up at the sky, feeling saved by my in-laws and Yolanda. I want to repay their kindness soon, which means I must work hard in both my job and parenting. Heather, I'll keep doing my best, so it'll be a while before I join you. Sorry, but please keep watching over us, I say. Madison grips my hand tightly. I cherish this happiness, determined to keep living. That's what I think. Returning to my desk, an on-site caught my eye. Next to my desk, in the trash bin, there was a lunchbox discarded. Even I couldn't keep silent, raising my voice. Who did this? Who would do such a thing? An employee nearby gave me a meaningful look without saying a word. I told you, didn't I? Please eat your homemade lunches outside, and yet, you bring them inside. It stinks, so I threw it in the trash, said my boss, Kent. At Kent's words, my anger turned to sheer disbelief. Before I could even think of how to explain this, the person I had an appointment with appeared. Sorry to interrupt your fun conversation, Max. Has the promised item arrived? It's been a while, so I've been looking forward to it since this morning and worked hard, said the director, Ray, standing behind me. Kent, noticing Ray standing behind, hurriedly stood up. My name is Max. I've been working at this company for 25 years. I thought I had been working diligently at one company, but having lost in the promotion race, I am still a regular employee. However, I live surrounded by my supportive wife and beloved daughter, so I have no particular complaints about my current life. If I were to wish for more, it would be to get promoted to provide more for my family's budget, especially since my daughter started university this year, and to give my family a better life. Though that's what I wish for, reality doesn't always follow suit. It seems the promotion went to my colleague, Kent, and from April, I will be working under him. For the first few months, Kent, being new to the post, interacted with us with humility. However, gradually, his demeanor began to change. He started to lord over us, outright insulting and belittling our character, and we couldn't keep up. Kent often targeted younger employees, but increasingly he became aggressive towards me, once a drinking buddy. Hey, Max, the documents for this afternoon's meeting are ready, right? I haven't seen the draft yet, he said, his words dripping with condescension. Despite the unpleasant feeling, I said to Kent honestly, no, I wasn't even informed there's a meeting this afternoon. Kent was now my superior. Feeling awkward about my own words, I nevertheless responded to Kent politely. Right after my words, a loud noise erupted. Kent had kicked his desk. Then, he shouted with spittle flying. What are you talking about? It's because of your lack of task management that you're still a regular employee at your age. Listen, just to make it clear once more, there's a meeting at 2 p.m. today to discuss upward revisions of future business performance. You need to propose topics to improve productivity. You need to have looked at the preliminary documents by 1 p.m. It's crucial since people from other departments will be there too. Make sure it's done on time. Caught off guard by the sudden outburst, I was stunned. Glancing at the clock, its hands pointed at 9 a.m. No matter how fast I worked, the documents would be incomplete. I had to suggest we work on it together with Kent. Then, he made an unbelievable statement. Well then, I'm counting on you. I'm off for a cigarette break and won't be back for a while. I need to recharge for the big job this afternoon, he said, slipping a cigarette into his breast pocket and leaving the room. Kent's cigarette breaks had always been long, but since his promotion to manager, they became even worse, sometimes not returning during working hours. Today, of all days, He likely won't return until noon. I sighed deeply, seeing my pathetic reflection on the computer screen. I scrambled to gather the necessary data and create a logical, proposal-worthy document. Though it's far from perfect, by the time I finally got it into a presentable state, it was time for lunch break. After working non-stop for hours, I was utterly exhausted, and combined with a sense of relief, I felt my hunger. I searched my bag, then remembered, today of all days, I didn't have my lunchbox. In the rush of the morning, I had completely forgotten, but today was special. As I nervously waited at the visitor's entrance, I saw a figure running towards me, arms full of packages. "Dad, sorry for keeping you waiting. It took longer than I expected, but I'm not too late, am I?" "It's fine. I just went on lunch break. Thank you very much." Out of breath, carrying the lunchbox, was my daughter, Katie. Since becoming a university student, she started making her own lunches. Jokingly, I asked, "Could you make one for me too?" and she agreed. Ever since, I've been bringing her homemade lunches to work daily, and her cooking, further honed by attending cooking classes, has significantly improved. Today, she was bringing a lunch made in her cooking class, timed to coincide with my lunch break. As I was about to return to the office with a lunchbox in my bag, a familiar voice reached my ears. "Hello, and who might this be?" "Hello, Kent," I replied. As Kent, returning from a long cigarette break, assessed Katie and me. Disliking the way he appraised Katie, I responded with forced calmness. "You two have never met. This is my daughter, Katie, who just started university this year." "Hello. My father always speaks highly of you." Katie greeted politely. The moment Kent realized the woman before him was my daughter, he smirked. "I see. You're Max's daughter. Your dad must be tired at home too, right? He leaves work on time almost every day despite being slow at it. I worry he can't sleep well because he's bringing work home, given his poor progress at the office." Katie, perhaps too offended to respond, averted her eyes from Kent without saying a word. I wanted to retort. But of course, I lacked the courage, having never considered myself competent at work. Feeling pathetic for my inability to respond, Katie's displeasure seemed to prompt Kent to change his approach. "By the way, I saw you receiving something earlier. What did you get?" "A lunchbox. My daughter made it and brought it for me." "Is that so? I've heard you've been bringing homemade lunches daily recently, so here's my request." Kent beckoned me over. "Could you please eat your lunch outside from now on? Honestly, it smells and is disrupting work. I'd tolerate it if it were just me, but other employees have complained too. As their manager, I can't just ignore it, right? I'm sorry, but please." Kent whispered this, pretending it was difficult to say. The volume was clearly adjusted so Katie could hear. "I'm sorry for the intrusion. I'll be leaving now," Katie said, her face contorting briefly before biting her lip and walking away. Seeing Katie's nearly tearful expression, usually so spirited, pained me deeply. She must have held back, knowing him being my boss. I felt even more pathetic. I'd explained to her that Kent's remarks were baseless lies when I got home. With that thought, I opened the door Kent had entered through. At my desk, I placed my bag down and took a moment. I wanted to open the lunchbox right away, but I had a prior engagement and couldn't eat just yet. Deciding to use the restroom first, I left my belongings and stepped out. Only a few minutes had passed, but upon returning, a shocking scene unfolded. Next to my desk, in the trash bin, was the lunchbox Katie had brought. Discarded and emptied, not the container I usually use. I couldn't remain silent, raising my voice. Who did this? Who would do such a thing? My colleague, without saying anything, gave me a meaningful look. It seemed to be one of Kent's pranks. "Kent, why would you do this? It was made with so much effort." This is too much. I clenched my fists tightly and questioned Kent. Kent responded with apparent amusement. Too much, you say? That's my line. Didn't I tell you? Please eat your homemade lunches outside. Yet, you brought them inside. It smells. So I threw it in the trash, Kent said, his word leaving me stunned beyond anger. You're finished, I said. What? Who do you think you are talking to, and what do you mean by finished? Before I could answer, Kent suddenly looked as if he had come to an understanding. Indeed, such a smelly and unappetizing lunch shouldn't have just been thrown in the trash. I should have wrapped it in newspaper and plastic. The omelet with spring onions smells and looks bad. What a blunder on my part, Kent said, laughing loudly. Before I could think of how to explain, the person I had an appointment with appeared. Sorry to interrupt your fun conversation, Max. Has the promised item arrived? I've been looking forward to it since it's been a while and worked hard today, said the director, Ray, standing behind me. Noticing Ray, Kent hurriedly stood up. Ray, how are you? What brings you here? Kent seemed puzzled by Ray's presence, as they usually didn't spend lunch breaks together, let alone work in the same room. Actually, I had something for Max. I promised to have lunch with him today. Why with Max? Ray scratched his head, looking embarrassed. Well, it's a long story. Come on, Max, let's go to the cafeteria. About that, Ray. As I began to speak, Kent glared at me. He must have been uneasy about what I would say, but of course, it was impossible to keep it hidden. My daughter brought 2 lunches earlier, but Kent threw one in the trash. I still have mine in my bag, though it's not ideal. Would you mind eating that one instead? Ray glanced at the trash can I pointed to, and his previously calm expression dramatically changed. There, he saw familiar lunchbox and food. Facing Kent, Ray spoke solemnly. Kent, is what he said true? Did you treat his lunch this way? Wait, Ray. Kent scrambled for an excuse. Max has been bringing his lunch every day, and several employees complained about the smell. I don't know how his daughter prepares it, but you can see, right? The omelet with spring onions even smells rotten, and the other food isn't edible. Eating it would have been bad for your health, Ray. It's almost a good thing it was thrown away. Kent, unknowing, only made things worse with his excuses. Ray, seething with anger, spoke with dignity. What do you think food is? Even if it were your own, this is someone's lunch. Making something for someone means it's filled with unseen sentiments. I can hardly believe someone who doesn't understand that can put heart into their work. Promoting you to manager, I need to reconsider if it was the right decision. Kent vehemently objected, his face reddening. Wait, I take pride in my work ethic and don't fall short to anyone. It's absurd to equate this incident with my work performance. Indeed, I threw away the lunch to improve the workplace environment. The method may have been poor, and I'll be mindful in the future. However, Max also needs guidance for bringing in sanitary lunches. Ray appeared dismayed at Kent's attempt to still paint me as the culprit. Let me say this, it's impossible that Max's lunch was unsanitary or improperly made. How can you be so sure? Kent leaned forward, skeptical of Ray's confidence. Max's daughter, Katie, attends the cooking class my wife runs. Of course, my wife has food and hygiene certifications, and today's lunch was made there. Are you suggesting my wife manages ingredients carelessly or cooks improperly? To disparage the vegetables we grow in our garden is also disappointing. Ray explained, causing Kent's face to pale. Yet, Kent bit back, not learning his lesson. Ray, you're not suggesting I get demoted and he gets promoted, right? I won't forget this conversation. Mixing personal and professional matters like this, if it influences HR decisions, I'll sue. Ray responded firmly. Of course, there's no mixing of personal and professional matters. Since we've gone this far, let's lay everything out. Keeping things hidden won't satisfy anyone. Ray then shared his personal circumstances with Kent. As their child became a working adult, Ray and his wife spent more time together, it leading to more trivial arguments and a deteriorating relationship. After stopping the daily tradition of making him homemade lunches to petty fights, Ray sought to improve their marriage. Learning that my daughter attended cooking classes, I and Katie were asked by Ray to make this request: to learn how to make packed lunch at that cooking class. To bring 2 packed lunches to my workplace. Katie was to tell Ray's wife that she wanted to eat with me, making 1 packed lunch herself and the other by Ray's wife. Accepting this request gladly, Katie and I executed a plan today. Originally, we were supposed to eat the packed lunches made by Katie and Ray's wife together. After hearing the story, Kent snorted and said, "I understand the situation. I get why you are furious about the packed lunches being thrown away, but you're mixing personal and work matters. Right. Even during breaks, it's important to maintain some focus for work efficiency. I can't believe someone who can't take their job seriously is in a position of authority." Kent seemed completely unapologetic, now openly criticizing both me and Ray. Even during break time, another employee rushed over in a flurry. "Ray, I've been looking for you. Sorry to disturb your break, but there's been a complaint call demanding a manager. Given the nature of the complaint, I've put them on hold. Losing trust is fatal for a community-focused company like ours. Please, we need you to handle this." After a brief explanation, Ray took the handset to deal with the call. His expression darkened as he listened. Glancing at me and Kent while apologizing over the phone, Ray seemed troubled. Wondering what had happened, it seemed the call finally ended. "What were you doing this morning?" At Ray's words, filled with anger, I straightened my back. I was fully occupied making documents for this afternoon's performance improvement meeting, as instructed by Kent. "Why were you doing that? It's Kent's job. Plus, the meeting isn't today, it's next week, and I was asking about your whereabouts this morning, Kent," Ray clarified. Realizing the documents weren't needed today and the anger wasn't directed at me, I sighed in relief. In contrast, Kent was visibly sweating. "This morning, I was visiting our clients. Building relationships with the local community is also an important part of our work." "That's strange," murmured Ray. Then, he spoke as if admonishing a child who had done wrong. "I need you to be honest. What were you really doing this morning?" "I was visiting our clients." "That's enough." Ray cut him off to explain about the phone call. Someone driving our company car was seen leaving a casino in a bad mood, smoking in a non-smoking area, and even littering. They were berated when they pointed it out. Does this ring a bell? Kent, clearly shaken, avoided Ray's gaze and shook his head. "Well, the caller remembered the face and the license plate. We can see who it was from the parking lot footage, and the drive recorder would have caught their face. Interestingly, they also mentioned the brand of cigarette, which coincidentally matches the one in your pocket. Since we don't know who it is yet, I'll go apologize instead. I'll find out who it was," Ray said before leaving the room, apologizing to me for the packed lunch issue even though it wasn't his fault. Kent briefly looked like he wanted to stop Ray but ended up just standing there dumbfounded. Eventually, it was confirmed that Kent was the one at the casino, and after being shown the drive recorder footage, he had no choice but to admit it. Unfortunately for Kent, the person he had yelled at was a valued client, making his actions a significant issue within the company. Kent ended up resigning, not just being demoted, bringing peace back to the office. Meanwhile, I was promoted to manager after HR recognized my consistent work performance. Ray congratulated me, insisting his influence had nothing to do with it. Regardless, I felt even more motivated at work. For my promotion celebration, I was invited to Ray's house. Ray's home, filled with his wife's love, was a newly built mansion designed to also serve as a cooking class venue. Katie was invited along with me for the occasion, and the four of us, including Ray and his wife, gathered around the table. The evening was lively, especially with Katie's sociable nature. "Ray, this omelet is the best, isn't it?" Perhaps influenced by the alcohol, Ray was in an exceptionally good mood. His cheeks flushed as he spoke. "Jer, there's nothing as delicious as this in the world. Katie's future husband will be so lucky to eat such tasty food every day. I wonder if saying this makes her dad sad." While Ray said and laughing joyfully, Katie responded with a smug expression. "Oh, Ray, this omelet was made by your wife. You're the lucky one, eating such delicious meals every day. Really, to not recognize the taste of my cooking. From tomorrow, I'll have to include your favorite omelet in a packed lunch again," Ray's wife said, looking pleased. Seeing Ray's wife happy, both Ray and I smiled. Katie might not have known, but there was no way Ray couldn't recognize his wife's omelet. I dislike green onions, while Ray loves this green onion-filled omelet made by his wife. "Ray, how about we swap our packed lunches tomorrow?" I suggested. Trying to hide his embarrassment, Ray responded to my proposal. "No, I love my wife's packed lunches more than anything. It's a nice offer, but I'll stick to my own," he said. I remembered the look on Ray's face when he realized his favorite omelet had been thrown in the trash. It's hard to imagine the extent of his anger at that moment. Now, Ray's expression was the complete opposite of what it was then. Not just that. Everyone around the table wore a gentle expression,